see Senator Florez in the front row. You ready? This is SB 837 by Senator Florez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I would first like to begin addressing the comments of the committee. We would like to accept the following amendments: the technical amendments related to language consistency, the amendments related to the security audit of the smart meter, and the amendments related to the ownership of customer data. So those we would like to accept.
Hold on just a second. Do you have in front of you the analysis? Can you refer to the specific?
Gil.
It is in. That's a rolling blackout.
Thank you.
Those little hamsters down there, they just need.
Hold on just a second. What? If I could have everybody's attention, please. I know this is one of the more complex bills on the agenda today, and there are a series of suggested amendments in the analysis. Why don't we go through the order in which they appear in the analysis, and you tell me, Senator Florez, whether that's a yes, we accept.
Okay, well, the
no,
overall comment in the analysis was to make the language consistent, which is item 6, page 6 of the analysis.
On page 6 of the analysis, under comment number 2, the service disconnection
Under 6.
piece.
It's the last
Un-
one. Page 8.
Okay, page 8, item number 6, inconsistent terms, that is accepted, okay?
Okay. The amendments that deal with the security audit of the smart meter.
Security.
Security
What
audit.
page is that on?
Excuse me, I don't have a page 8. I have amendments on a separate item.
Page 8 of the analysis, he was referring to item 6.
So,
No, I get it.
Page 8 of the
So-
analysis on SB 837.
837, and mine goes up to 7, and then there's additional pages.
They didn't replace
Wanna run
the
off some
analysis,
copies?
there's revised analysis. Their staff didn't replace it, I think.
Members of the committee, there's a revised analysis that was 8 pages versus 7. Should have been placed in your binders. Okay. Sorry for the confusion here. Go ahead, Senator Florez.
Okay. So we would like to take the technical amendments related to language consistency, which is item 6 of the analysis, whatever page it's on.
Comment number 6 on page
Yes.
8.
The other amendment we'd like to take deals with the security audit of the smart meter, which is comment 5 of the analysis.
Under the deployment plans.
Oh, the date, okay. Yeah.
Okay. And just for clarity, that is an amendment that would apply the testing and technology standards to deployment plans approved by the PUC after January 1st, 2012. Okay.
And the other amendment we'd like to accept is the amendment related to the ownership of customer data, which is on the recommended amendments,
It's a couple different
page
places.
5, line 2, and page 13 of the suggested recommended amendments. Can you read that?
Number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1 and number 5?
Just number 1.
Just number 1?
Okay. Okay. So that we would like to take as amendments. However, we'd like to keep the integrity of the bill by doing the following, if committee would so allow us to do that. We'd like to accept the amendment regarding privacy as related to utilities, but retain PUC oversight over the handling of privacy by the utilities. And that would be in the analysis, in your amendments. Which one? Number 2. So we're not keeping Janice.
That doesn't
Just
just
sit here
take,
for a
that's
second.
intent language.
So this we're keeping. This is it. We're keeping. Okay.
Right.
And we do have some additions to committee amendments we'd like to hand out, if possible.
This is different from the recommended amendments.
Yes.
In the analysis and.
Right.
Okay, so these are new to us.
Okay. And in what we're handing out, we would, in essence, say that the PUC maintains oversight over the handling of privacy by utilities, and that we would retain vulnerability reporting and the academic data use provision. The amendments also keep third-party service provider provisions, but move them to the civil code, and it would retain language emphasizing the importance of remote disconnection. So these would be the amendments we would like to keep in the bill. We'd like to present the bill as with the amendments we just passed out.
Okay.
So let me get to
let's
the overall the bill. Members, the bill would create privacy standards for the smart grid data. It would also ensure that smart metering technologies are properly tested prior to installation of deployment, and it would ensure the Commission evaluate the impact of remote disconnection by smart meters and have utilities share best practices. And of course, it deals with the privacy aspects of the PUC, and these are the amendments we just passed over to you to retain what we think is the integrity of the bill, and that is to have some purview by the PUC over certain existing privacy-focused actions relating to smart meters. As you know, members, smart meters are a wonderful opportunity for the state. However, smart meters also have another effect, which is they can tell you just about anything in your household for the future, including how efficient your dishwasher might be running. And one would say you wouldn't want to share that information with folks in the private sector without your permission. And the bottom line is we think that consumers should own their information, and we're trying to find a very delicate balance here where, based on precedent, we have some PUC purview over this type of information within the context of utilities. And we do have witnesses in support.
Okay. Witnesses in support?
Mark Toney, Executive Director of TURN, the Utility Reform Network. Just two points I'd like to focus on. One is the issue of remote disconnects. This is a new capability that utilities have, and our concern is that when they have to go out and do a disconnect with a crew, it actually gives the utility an incentive to make an arrangement with the customer, a payment arrangement, because the cost is not only to send the truck out and the crew out to do a disconnect, you're going to send that same truck out to do a reconnect a day or two later. And in fact, our goal is to prevent the disconnects in the first place. And with the remote shutoff, that incentive is no longer there, and we have already seen large increases in disconnects because of the remote capability. We would like to minimize the harm that smart meters are able to do to families by having some sort of limits on the remote disconnects. That's one. The second thing is this issue of privacy in the first place. You know, the reason that we need such strong protections, you know, you've got privacy with credit card companies, we've got privacy with healthcare insurance and things like that. But almost every one of those situations is a voluntary one. And what I mean is that we choose which credit card company, okay, we go. We have the ability to read the disclosure, the consumer disclosure, and decide whether we agree with their privacy policy or not. In this situation, one, we as customers do not have the choice of our electricity gas provider. That is chosen for us, one. And two, the smart meters are not voluntary. They're mandatory. So that is why we need such strong protections, because we are in a situation in which consumers do not have the choice either of the provider or of smart meters. This is a statewide policy, and everybody is getting them. So that is why TURN asked for your support of this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Yes, wearing a different hat here. Lenny Goldberg on behalf of Privacy Rights Clearinghouse. Let me talk a little about the privacy issues here, and we appreciate the the work that the committee has done on this bill to make it consistent with telephone privacy. Currently, in your consumer data as a telephone user cannot be released except with your permission. So that in the amendments to this bill, and as I said, appreciate the committee help, are similar to what we have in telephone. Now, your energy usage data, there have been some studies which demonstrate that you can pretty much know what anybody's doing in their house at any time by reading those meters. Now, that may be useful for the consumer in terms of being able to provide energy efficiency and improve their usage, but that's a decision of the consumer. And I think that there probably is no disagreement that we're talking about opt-in for release of the data. The one area that in many, many privacy issues that we are concerned about is that when you release that data, what happens to it next? To a third-party provider that may be an energy service company that is trying to, that is going to help you with your energy efficiency. And we, I think at the request of the committee, moved that from PUC regulation to the civil code in areas such as, I believe Mr. Florez proposed that, in the areas of financial privacy and other privacy, these are civil code protections which say if you voluntarily release your data, it may or may not be released by that third party. It effectively does not go on the wire so that you have some control of the data. We think this will make the use of this data actually more likely to be used by consumers. So the third-party issue is an important privacy protection. We're in strong support of the bill.
Matthew Martin.
There's nothing in our analysis regarding civil.
I believe Senator Flores said to move the third party.
Yes,
And
as in front of, we mentioned in the amendments, we would like to move the third-party service provider privacy action in the bill from the PUC code to the civil code.
Shouldn't we then send it back to judicial for them to look at that?
Well, I'm hoping that we've talked to the judiciary consultant about that, and the committee consultant said that that third-party regulation was not appropriate for PUC.
Seems to be a difference of opinion regarding that, but let's go on with additional.
No doubt, Senator Dutton, and of course there's a judiciary committee also in the Assembly. So as we discuss this, we will probably continue to.
All right, well, let's go on with additional witnesses in support.
Okay. Matthew Marcus with the Division of Ratepayer Advocates. We're in support of the bill. I want to build on Turn's comments. We all agree there are benefits to ratepayers from smart meters, but at the same time, these meters make it that much easier for utilities to store usage information and to disconnect service. In November of 2009, DRA released a report identifying that low-income service disconnections were up by 19%. We also identified potential solutions. At a time when a third of California households are considered low-income, it's imperative that we do all that we can to prevent service disconnections. We look forward to working with both the author and other stakeholders on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members, Will Gonzalez on behalf of the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. We basically voluntarily have rolled out our smart meter program with many of the privacy provisions and disconnect provisions that are very consistent with this bill. We have a macro level reason for supporting this bill. We think it's critically important throughout the state that utilities roll out smart meter programs in a manner that are careful with how they deal with consumers and privacy. And it's a statewide interest that these smart meters are rolled out carefully. So with that, we support.
So are you requesting that you be regulated like the rest of the RUUs?
Not at all.
Oh, okay. Just thought I'd double check. So, okay. Any additional witnesses in support? Okay. Is there witnesses in opposition, please?
Neither opposition nor support yet. We just wanted to state some concerns with the amendments that were handed out today. I'm sorry, Kelly Boyd with Southern California Edison. We do not yet have an official position. We're hoping to get to a place where we can be supportive of this. We believe the bill enunciates a lot of important principles on the disconnect policies, on the integrity of smart meters, and on privacy. But the amendments moving things to the civil code, that would be an inconsistent treatment between communications utilities and energy utilities. We think that keeping this in the public utilities code would allow us the same, our customers, the same privacy and protection that communications customers have. And we hope we can work with the senator and his staff to clarify that going forward. But we are a little concerned with the changes that were handed out today. Yeah.
Kent Kaus with Pacific Gas and Electric Company. We share the concerns that Edison just expressed on the privacy provisions. We're also interested in seeing the new round of amendments that were handed out today on the disconnect provisions. It appears as if there's still language in the bill that sets a cap on the number of disconnects that we can have. It's unclear to me if that's removed. We like the direction that the proposed amendments in the analysis headed us down the path to. Interested in reviewing those amendments to determine where we are ultimately. We have a very lengthy process already in place for disconnect. We have incentives to avoid disconnects. We do everything we can to avoid disconnects. We provide 7 to 8 notices, both in writing and in telephone communications to the customer. We encourage the customer to contact us, work out any arrangements they may have, inform them of the low-income assistance programs that we have. So we just want to make sure that all those kinds of programs are recognized, and we'll do what we can to keep our customers provided service.
Mike Murray on behalf of San Diego Gas and Electric, and we share the similar concerns with Edison and with pg&e. We have been working with the author's office on reconciling some of these issues. We like the direction that the committee amendments have pushed us towards, and we will continue to work to try to resolve these issues with all the stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Next witness, please. We're on to questions that we're doing testimony. Senator Wright.
As I'm looking at the issue of the disconnection, are we saying that the people were disconnected unfairly? I mean, are they being disconnected because they didn't pay their bill, or are they being disconnected because, what? I don't understand the problem here.
The problem is the new technology allows for remote disconnection. In the past, you have policies that allow for one more knock at the door. And with remote under smart meters, you're able to hit a button. And in many cases, there may not be another last knock at the door for some sort of payment to keep the utilities on in general. I believe the state of New York, for example, didn't go as far as California may be going. It actually has a last knock at the door policy. Even though they may have more technology available to it, the goal here is to simply say that we're not sure whose button we're pushing sometimes when we say didn't pay. Maybe someone on an oxygen.
But here's what I'm saying. I mean,
yeah.
If we're concerned that someone is being disconnected unfairly, I would be concerned about that, whether or not it was done remotely or otherwise. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how you could say.
We're not debating whether it's fair or unfair. We're saying the technology should allow for the same types of communication as before with the customer that we had before the technology.
But a point of clarification, Senator Florez, the author, is absolutely right that the technology does allow for remote disconnect. I think that the legal or policy question is, should we legally allow for a remote disconnect without a last knock at the door, et cetera? What is currently the case before the PUC? Does the PUC currently allow utilities to do the remote disconnect, or do they not today?
Well, I can only tell you, Senator Padilla and Senator Wright, in the original 2006 application to the PUC for smart meters, it's interesting if you read the budget, you not only laid off a good majority of meter readers. We get that part, all the labor savings that accrued to the company. But there's also quite a few $1 million that actually budgeted in remote disconnects. I mean, I would hope that we would never budget in a proposal based on a technology that says it assumes, when I look at budgets and they have to balance out, it means you have to meet a target. I would hope that we wouldn't move this technology in order to make $200 million or whatever, $60 million, for example, in order to, in essence, meet the budget. I would hope we'd have, with the new technology, the ability not to disconnect and even try to find other ways to provide for that.
In the budget that you referred to on the remote disconnect, sorry to intervene here, but does it differentiate between remote disconnects at the customer's request because they're moving versus remote disconnects due to non-payment?
All it says in the original rate case in 2006 is a budget item that I believe probably purports the fact that in order to meet the particular rate, the case that was before the PUC in approving this technology, that actually had a number. Didn't bring the rate case with me.
Did it? I'm just curious. Does it or does it not distinguish between remote disconnect due to non-payment versus remote disconnect due to customer request?
We're not arguing whether. Well, I assume, Senator Padilla, that if it was money coming into the company, it would be for those who did not pay their bill. For those who are moving, it seemed that they would have put in their budget a savings.
Okay. Senator Wright, I'm sorry.
If what we were saying, if all we were saying was we'd like another knock at the door, maybe the problem becomes, Senator Florez, is that $260 million savings actually accrued to the same low-income customers that you're describing. Mm-hmm. If that cost goes back into then the same customer that you want to help will pay the $260 million, whatever that number was. That savings is passed on to the same customer you want to protect. The higher you make the cost, we could say you can't disconnect people, at which point nobody would pay their bill, at which point the utility would go bankrupt.
And we're not saying any of that. That's what you're saying.
No, but you're almost. But what you're saying.
I'm not getting close to saying that.
Yeah, you are.
Senator,
You're
right?
saying that
No,
you're saying there's a statistical point at which they can't disconnect a certain number of customers.
Not saying that.
Your bill, the analysis says that.
It's saying they should come up with policies and procedures that allow for a more fair disconnection practice given the new technology.
This bill requires the IOU to implement specific strategies to compel customer payment prior to service disconnection and direct the PUC to require that IOUs reduce disconnection rates for low-income customers so they are consistent with non-low-income consumers. How do you do that without statistically saying I'm going to leave some people's meters disconnected?
And we have accepted the amendment from the committee that fixes that last portion of what you just said, Senator Wright.
Okay,
I get what you're saying. You're saying if we take money away, it's going to cost money on the other end. Yeah, I get it. I understand, but we're trying not to do that.
At the end of the day, somebody's got to pay. I'm concerned certainly as to the use of third-party information, and I think on that score we should be definitive. I mean, and there already are laws in place as to the use of information by utility. One of the problems we had, for example, Senator Florez, was when we were trying to expand the use of CARES and other low-income programs, we couldn't share the CARES information with the utility and vice versa. So there already are significant privacy issues. If they need to be strengthened, I get that. It's true that I remember in the old days when in cable television when they had to come to your house and go up on the pole and unplug it. And then you could go back and plug it back in if you didn't have no money. And so they would unplug it, you'd plug it. I mean, it was kind of a cat and mouse game until the head ends changed and you could do it remotely. I'm not certain if you said, I simply want to knock at the door. But the statistical issues, and I haven't studied the new amendment, but the statistical issues, that scares me because what I don't want to do is create an incentive for people not to pay their bill.
And I understand it. Okay. What scares me is when, also, Senator Wright, on the flip side of that is when the utility itself, in arguing for the new technology in the original request to the PUC, puts a number, a hard number for the amount of disconnects.
As well they should.
Well, I'm not sure. If you're finding savings from technology, one might put that in another category, a sinking fund or something of this sort, which would allow them the ability to be flexible on that.
But the way their business works, if that cost goes down, whatever that number is, then their allowed profit is reduced to compensate for that amount. They don't pocket the cash. What happens is that their operating cost is reduced so that the cost to the consumer is reduced by that amount. That's not pocketed by the utility.
And on this note,
Okay.
if it wasn't clear from my questions earlier, I'm in agreement with Senator Wright's view on it. Just because a number appears in the budget doesn't give me enough information to know what's causing that number to be realized. There's a big difference between disconnects due to non-payment versus disconnects at the customer's request because they're moving, for example.
Or if the disconnect was erroneously done. If we had evidence that Mrs. Smith's bill was disconnected and she was in fact paying, and the remote caused that to occur, I'd be worried at that point because she paid her bill and it shouldn't have been disconnected. I would be concerned about that.
Can we have our witness say a few words on this?
So hold on, and I apologize I ducked out of the room for a few minutes for a call, but Senator Dutton, have we finished all witness testimony in support and opposition?
We were just starting opposition. I don't know if there's still more in opposition.
Okay, let's finish testimony in opposition because when that is done, we'll continue with questions and comments from the committee, but I got to lay out some options for potential action today since we're in a very unique situation. We have the bill in print before us. We have recommended amendments in the analysis, some which have been taken, some which have not been accepted by the author. We have an author walking in with amendments, somewhat amendments on paper, but rules of our committee limit our ability to handle those. So I'm not sure what the author's desire is going to be, whether to take the bill as is on an up or down vote, as we recommend to be amended on an up or down vote, or with hypothetical amendments that we can't take here today on an up or down vote. So if the discussion wasn't complex enough as it is, just want to begin to lay that out. Next witness, please.
I've already testified, can't counsel PG&E, but I've seen the amendments now, and it's unclear to me if these amendments actually address one of the issues on the cap on the disconnect. It doesn't appear as if that's done.
Mr. Chair, if we're going to allow people who've already testified to testify again, then I think this gentleman should also be able to testify again.
Okay. Was there anybody who hasn't testified already still wanting to testify? Going once, going twice. Okay. Testimony's done. Thank you very much.
There are two ways I'd like to respond to the question posed by Senator Wright. One is that when crews go out to shut off customers, we know from our experience that there are a number of times where crews will make a decision not to do a shut-off, either because there's a small infant at home or some medical condition that wasn't recorded by the utility, and in fact the utility doesn't want to shut them off according to their own rules and regulations and policies, but they just didn't get the information. So that's one thing. A remote disconnect, it's harder to ascertain that from a home visit when someone actually comes to shut off service. So that's one issue. The second issue is actually more of a global issue. You know, TURN has sat and met with each of the utility companies for over a year to talk about shut-off policy. And one of the interesting things is almost every company, and I hope this will, if I'm not accurate by this, Kent, you'll correct me. It turns out that there are far more people eligible to be shut off than are ever actually shut off. Far more. And in fact, I remember very clearly meeting with PG&E where they told us, we don't have the capacity to shut off everybody who we legally have the right to shut off. Okay? That is what they have told us. We happen to believe that. Okay? And so part of the question is, how do we want shut-off policy to be determined? And collection policy. Is the goal to simply say, the utility companies, if you now have the capacity to shut off, there was a Division of Ratepayer Advocate study that showed that PG&E had an increase of shut-offs for care customers, 75% increase over the previous year. Okay? That can go much, much higher. So the question is it the policy of the state to do everything we can to avoid shutoffs, to come up with payment plans, to work with customers, which I even think the utilities would say they want to do? Or is the policy simply to say the utility has the right to shut off anybody that's having a hard time paying. And that is the reason, and that's the rationale to say we don't want the new technology to be driving a doubling, tripling, quadrupling of shutoffs. We'd like the new policy to be integrated with a sensible collection policy, a sensible payment arrangement policy, because in fact, we understand that shutoffs are one of the methods for collection, but certainly should not be the only method for collection.
Thank you very much. Let me ask witnesses to step away from the table. You're the sponsor, so you can stick around to answer specific questions directed at you. Is Mr. Randolph from the PUC still here? As you come forward, to Mr. Tony's recent remarks, my understanding is that PUC has a hearing or rulemaking open on those very issues. Is that correct?
We do. I'm not completely versed on that rulemaking, however, on where we stand and what issues are being considered.
Okay.
We may have somebody else who can testify on that.
Okay, if we can find that out. And then also, hold on, don't go. You may want to bring the cushion with you to make that feel a little more comfortable. The disconnect policies at the PUC right now, I mean, part of the clarification I want to get in this conversation, it's coming across as if there's no disconnect policy in place today, and this bill is seeking to put certain things in place because this technology is a boogeyman. That's the way I'm hearing it.
Where do you hear that?
Okay.
I didn't say that.
So I want to make sure that while I was trying to call the attention to a distinction between the technology allowing for remote disconnects and the ramifications of that versus what the PUC currently allows vis-a-vis disconnect, manual or remotely. So what are the steps currently in place today, and do they or do they not apply to customers with a smart meter?
And this might be a question better addressed to each utility. There are disconnect procedures at the Commission. However, it varies from utility to utility depending upon their tariffs.
Okay. And let's take the minimum requirements that are out there. Do they or do they not require an attempt to communicate to the customer?
Each utility has requirements for multiple attempts at communication.
Okay, so it's not like, somebody missed one payment, it's, 2 days, 15 days, whatever it is, and somebody back at headquarters is going to push a button and cut somebody off.
Yeah, it is my understanding that each utility is required to, at a minimum, send a past due notice letter and to make telephone contact with the customer before they're disconnected.
Okay, and do those requirements stay in place while smart meters are being deployed?
The smart meter deployment should not change those requirements.
Okay. How about after
they're deployed? Again, I would go back to each utility on the specifics of their tariff, but my understanding is each tariff was, never specifically said you have to go out and knock on the door. That was the side effect of having to go out and switch the flip switch. But each tariff stays in place with the new smart meter. So there'd still be a requirement of a contact, but you're right, there wouldn't necessarily be that last knock on the door.
But would commission action be necessary for that contact requirement to change?
Either the utilities would have to file a tariff with the commission to change the rules, or the commission could do that through its own motion.
Okay, but it seems like either of those two options, commission action is required if what Senator Florez is concerned was to come true, and that is without customer contact, they can be disconnected.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Senator Wright?
It is not required that you contact the customer prior to cutoff. That's factually wrong. If you happen to go to the house and they're there, you can contact them. But if you go to the house and knock on the door and no one's home, you hang a note on the door and say, I just cut the power off. And the reason that you do that, as Mr. Tony stated, is that if you were shutting off gas, for example, or electricity, you'd want to make sure, just as if you were turning it on, that you didn't create a dangerous situation. That's the reason for the knock at the door. It ain't an opportunity for you to mitigate the pain. It's a safety issue. So if no one's home and they come, they're shutting off your power, and they'll hang a note on the door and let you know that it was shut off. By the same token, with gas, for example, they can't turn it on if you're not home because your house might blow up if they did that. The concern I have is we're talking apples and oranges. If we're saying that this would create an increase because people would be unfairly disconnected, I'm concerned as well, because now people who are paying their bill come up short. Clearly, if I'm a utility and I've got X number of disconnections, I'm probably going to route my drivers or my crews in such a way that if you're at one end of my district, you may end up with an extra week or two just because the logistics of doing the turnoff bought you extra time. So it's clear that you could accelerate it with a smart meter, but that doesn't mean that someone was disconnected unfairly. So the concern I have, again, is that if you end up, and it's marginal cost, because, I mean, for PG&E, $300-400 million, but you want to make clear that all of those unpaid bills ultimately accrue to the pocket of the same people that you want to protect. Because if the bill doesn't get paid, then that means that everybody else's rate is increased to cover that unpaid debt. Recovering the debt faster makes the utilities cost lower. So if we're going to say you can't cut them off or you got to do the extra things, now we're increasing cost. The reason that they're not as adamantly opposed is that they understand that all those costs will be passed back to the ratepayer. Mm-hmm. So that it's not, I mean, the savings that you pick up, and I'm sympathetic too that there are people who are being cut off and they're losing their jobs. I got that. But I don't know that we're going to be able to legislate an extra month of people not to pay their bill. I don't know that we want to do that by statute anyway.
Senator Wright, and if I could respond to Senator Wright, I hear you loud and clear. I guess the goal of this is not to allow people, in many cases, to cheat the system in a way that would incur more costs and ultimately cost people more through a rate increase. It's to recognize with smart meter technology, the reason for this bold experiment is the amount of savings that accrues to the utility. I mean, the millions of dollars they've saved in laying off or letting go of meter readers completely, absolutely, does a couple of things. First and foremost, when you are remotely shut off with a smart meter, you have to make an assumption that the smart meters work, because there's no meter reader anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think PG&E would be the first to tell you, because they're sitting right next to me, that they have had problems with their smart meters. It's going to happen in all of your districts. You're going to hear about it more and more and more, because the technology in many cases misfires. It doesn't send the communication to central. So what PG&E may do is they may estimate your bill, which is allowable currently, even with a meter reader. But the fact that we have less meter readers and more reliance on technology that may misfire, we're going to see a lot higher, in my view, estimation of bills, which in many cases might be completely erroneous and wrong. It may be someone's bill has been historically $300, maybe $900. And what you find after that is the person who can't pay the $900 bill pays the normal $300, and the next thing they know, they get a call, since it's one of the policies, that their power is going to be shut off without having, in many cases, the ability to argue the case. And right now, the PUC has thousands of cases before it, thousands, with smart meter technologies in terms of complaints that they are still trying to process through. The PUC is inundated at this point in time, trying to get to all of those customers that in many cases didn't get a good answer from PG&E. So I just think that what we're trying to do, Senator Wright, is simply recognize with the new technology that we are having a lot of savings accrue. A lot of savings are accruing to the company. This is the hope. If it wasn't, then we should have never done this bold experiment at all. We should have just kept it the way it was. So if there are savings, all we're asking is that if the PUC indeed is, as Senator Padilla has said, discussing this item, that we simply put in statute whatever the outcome of that discussion is to the benefit of the consumer. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is trying to keep the disconnection issue as a discussion point within the legislature and to try to hopefully codify some protections for consumers with this new technology.
Okay. Okay. I have waiting to
Mr. Chairman?
ask questions Senator Oropeza, I believe. No? Okay, then Senator Kehoe, followed by Senator Dutton. But first, let me just try to sort of organize the conversation here from a substance standpoint and in a process standpoint. On the substance side, if we follow the outline, if you will, laid out in the analysis, there's service disconnect issues, which we've been talking about. There's a whole privacy protection conversation that is complex. There's a consistent treatment in law section of the analysis, and make some comments on it. It doesn't recommend amendments per se, but there may be questions, comments from committee on that. There's the deployment plans conversation that Senator Florez has already accepted authors' amendments on. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, that's been addressed, but that would be the specific area that speaks to the whether it's calibration or testing mechanisms that Senator Florez spoke to a minute ago. And there's the inconsistent terms amendment that, again, the author has accepted as written in the analysis. So the big two being the service disconnect conversation and the privacy protection conversation. And then we'll get to process later. Senator Kehoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few comments. I don't know. It's an important bill with a lot of policy areas that we're attempting to address. And we've spent a lot of time on shutoff, and I'm not. That is important. I don't know that advanced meters prevent us or the PUC from having a fair, clear shutoff policy, and shutoff should be absolutely the last resort. The door hanger, when they actually pull the switch, is there, but I don't think that means that there hasn't been a process of the late notice or the telephone contact, depending on your service area. I don't know what all the rules are, but there is a process that's been explained to me in my service area and by some of the other utilities over the years. I think what I got from Dr. Tony's remarks, at least in part, on the shutoff, the remote shutoff being a particular problem, is that if there is this pool, a much larger pool than the utilities can ordinarily get to with a crew in a truck, that remote shutoff would be much easier. And so a larger number of people would lose their service if there weren't other protections in the process that would prioritize, bill paying or other kinds of arrangements prior to the shutoff occurring. So I think we have that. I think we have that opportunity, us or the PUC, and I think we should use it to make sure that families are not shut off from their electric power without proper notice and without some kind of plan in place. Privacy issues are super complex. One person's convenience is another person's privacy issue. Every time we go on the internet and we buy something and we happily type in our credit card number and our home address and our phone number and all these things, we are giving up, some degree of privacy, or at least sharing it with that internet retailer. And we do it in a lot of other ways too, our credit cards, et cetera. So the advanced meters allow for a lot more data collection. But I know I have constituents that embrace that technology and want to see it happen, want to be able to set their air conditioning temperature or their heating temperature from the office before they leave work and all that. The advanced meters have been rolled out. The numbers are in the staff report. In PG&E territory, SDG&E territory, and Edison territory. And I don't want to name names, but the problem is in the PG&E territory. San Diego has almost 1.5 million advanced meters, just in electric, and another 900,000 in gas. And I'm not sure, I don't want to go out on a limb because I didn't call the district office, but I don't think we've received a single complaint. But I will look into it and make sure. But this can be done, and it should be done. Electric metering, advanced metering is to electricity conservation what water metering is to water conservation. We can't get to our conservation goals without them. And so I know Senator Florez is struggling with this too. As anyone knows who's ever glanced at Senator Florez for more than 30 seconds, he's a high-tech aficionado. His BlackBerry is never far from his thumbs. And so this is not high technology versus, low technology or rejecting high technology. We just have to find a way to, apparently in the PG&E territory, to do it better. That's customer education and customer relations and responsiveness when people have questions, why their bill doubled, whether it's a mechanical flaw or, they don't have their house insulated and all that. So those are the three areas I'm concerned of: the shutoff process, a better rollout in the PG&E territory for advanced meters, because we need to do that, and then bearing down on the privacy issues without shortchanging consumers who want a more convenient and a more information laden electric data for their own use at home. They want to see when their peak times are. They want to know when they're going to run their dryer or recharge their electric car. So we want consumers to know that, and many want to know it themselves. My problem, Mr. Chairman, and I know you've gone back to it a couple times, is with all the bill, the analysis, some amendments taken, some not, and then the third, then the additional analysis. I don't really know what's before us as a piece right now, and because it's such an important bill, that's a concern. So I would like some clarification through the discussion on that.
Okay. Well, as chair, I'd suggest the following when the time comes. If we heard from Senator Florez that he was willing to accept all of the amendments recommended in the analysis, then I would be clear as to what's in front of us. I would feel comfortable voting on that substance, recognizing clearly that there's issues to be worked out as the bill moves through the legislative process. Short of that, just for a little confusion on my part, if nothing else, I'd be hesitant to be an aye vote. Senator Dutton.
Well, Mr. Chair, that answers that. We'll just take the bill as you want us to have the bill. So let's not. So as we're talking about the rest of the bill for the rest of the time, let's just assume that the bill is, as the committee consultant wrote it. We're a little concerned with the fact that disconnection, at the minimum, will not be part of the bill because of, for whatever reason, miscommunication between staff. That seems to be the heart of the bill. So if we take the amendments from the committee, we'll not have disconnection at all. I think that's a travesty for consumers. Even if we could have some language that kept it open until the PUC had a rulemaking that would allow us to codify it, at least allow us to move the bill forward in even the vaguest language for disconnection. So I would definitely accept all of the committee's amendments, but I do think that somehow taking disconnection out of the entire bill is kind of like having a, my old days, a bill about racetracks and not talking about horses or something of that sort. So I mean, it's good.
I'll respond to that after
Okay.
Other members of the committee have had a chance to ask their questions.
Sure.
Senator Dutton.
Well, I was going to ask for some input from PG&E and Southern California Edison. Yeah, Kelly, I understand Southern California Edison currently has an ongoing program and stuff with smart metering and so forth. How are you handling your disconnects and what's your protocols regarding that and so forth?
We are handling our disconnects consistent with the way we always have. We haven't changed our tariffs or any of our rules. There is a second phase in the smart meter proceeding which will address some of these issues, and it's our intention to abide by the rules the Commission adopts there. We're not intending to make any changes because we can remotely disconnect.
Yeah, but you don't. When you have that process and so forth, isn't there some requirements or something that you have to verify that, or something that somebody's actually living there, or something of that? There's other requirements other than just pulling a switch.
It would be helpful if you described the process for those of us that don't live in your area.
Let's see how I do. I'm not intimately familiar. I believe we have 2 notice requirements after the first 30-day billing cycle, so you're actually looking into about 60 days. Mail notification, phone notification. At this point, we do still have folks go out and the door is tagged. That's the current process. And that's also the process that the Commission's looking at in the context of smart meters to see what changes may be necessitated.
Is there any difference between your protocol, for senior citizens versus, people with special needs or anything? Is there?
Yes, there is. There are specific people who are medically fragile. There's seniors, and most of them have special designations on their billing accounts.
Okay, so there's already things in statute that deals with people like with special needs and things that you have to abide by?
I believe it's tariff and commission order. I don't think it's statutory.
And what kind of liability or civil liability do you currently have if you turn somebody's power off and so forth? Isn't there some kind of a liability issue that you have to deal with, or is that I have to ask that of somebody else?
Yeah, that's a legal liability question. I'm probably not prepared to answer right now. I know that our tariff has
if you're a landlord and
right.
the utilities are part of it, and I shut off somebody's utilities, and I've got some liability issues. I know. I'm just curious if you also had the similar.
I would tell you that yes, we do have liabilities. I can't tell you the extent of them.
Okay. And same kind of questions for PG&E too.
Yeah, we have a 15-day notice, a 48-hour notice. We have phone calls that go. Our phone calls are automated, but there is a prompt for the customer to hit a button to talk to a live customer. We do multiple. There's 7 to 8 notices before any disconnect is taken. Okay. 7 to 8, yeah. 7 or 8, I just can't remember the exact number.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes, different formats between in writing, and it's a different billing envelope. It doesn't come as your regular bill. It looks different. It's bright orange for us, so it looks different for the customer, and then there's the phone calls. And then we also have different notification for medical baseline customers who are have some sort of life support equipment at their home. There's additional phone calls to those customers to ensure that they're notified before any disconnect takes place.
Okay. Go ahead.
Same with language variation. Yeah, we bill, there's 5 different languages. I can't cite them, but those are in statute that we mail to. And in the telephone prompt, I believe there's only a Spanish that you can switch to Spanish. I don't know if all languages are on the phone call, but I know Spanish is.
Thank you, Senator Dutton. Senator Corbett, did you have any questions or comments?
Well, I have to admit it's a little hard to follow the bouncing amendments this morning. But I would like to ask directly, and I'm just looking at the revised analysis for the first time, and I haven't been able to find it. When the bill left the Judiciary Committee, it included protections, privacy protections for third parties. And I believe you raised a concern about it being addressed in the utilities code.
No,
Well, no,
it's in the
should
civil
be. The request is that it should be placed in the civil code, so we do not have the argument that people were concerned about. So has that amendment been addressed in this analysis, and is it going to be accepted? Because
We proposed that, but it has not been addressed in the analysis.
the third-party protections were
Right.
part of the work done on the privacy issue in the Judiciary Committee.
I believe
that
that's
bill
what.
with third-party protections for a reason.
I understand. I believe it's on page 7 of the revised analysis.
So does this bill?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, we didn't get the revised analysis. I know as the author of the bill, it's probably important to get that. We got the amendments from the committee 48 hours ago, and Sunday we got the new analysis on Monday. Today's Tuesday. Now we have a second set of revised analysis. I mean, there's 3. I can understand the confusion. I can understand the confusion, but when we excuse me,
Senator Corbett's question.
I'm trying to respond to Senator Corbett's question. Senator Corbett, the reason for the confusion is that we received amendments from this committee on Sunday. There was a committee analysis put out yesterday on Monday. Today we walk in and we're wondering if whether or not the revised analysis is indeed in our binders today. So the confusion is also due to the fact that we are trying to keep the integrity of the bill. We're trying to add some things that were discussed in judiciary, which is third party move from PUC to civil, and none of those are reflected, at least in our current analysis, and I think that's where the confusion lies.
So my specific concern is that the third-party protections continue to remain in the bill, and if there's concern with it being placed in the Public Utilities Code, then there's a very simple fix to place those protections in the Civil Code, and that would address your concern about the code.
And let me ask committee staff to comment on that, because it's a twofold concern. One is in the Public Utilities Code versus the Civil Code. The second, there's a lengthier discussion about whether, as a point of policy, the Public Utilities Commission is best equipped for this duty and responsibility. Kelly, do you want to comment?
Yeah, yes, please. And just to clarify the revised analysis, we were informed on Thursday that Senator would be striking the disconnect policy, and consequently the analysis that was written over the weekend, because the bill didn't get to us until Friday from APROPS as amended, only had one sentence on the disconnect policy, that the author would be striking that. And when I was told yesterday that the author wanted to retain that provision, then I revised the analysis. So comment number 2, instead of being one sentence on disconnect, is now a substantive comment on the disconnect policy. That is the only change in the analysis. Comment 2 goes from one sentence to several paragraphs. Awesome. Then on the issue of third parties, this committee does not have jurisdiction on civil code issues. There was a broader policy question initially. Should third parties, such as Google and other companies, be regulated by the Public Utilities Commission? The staff recommendation was no. The next question about whether those entities should be regulated at all is not addressed by this analysis.
But in effect, what you're asking is the third-party privacy provisions be stricken from the bill because of your concern about it being regulated in the Public Utilities Code. My point is that the bill left the Judiciary Committee, who has jurisdiction over the privacy issues, and allowed those to remain. I would request that they continue to remain, and if there's a problem with the code, that it be inserted in the Civil Code, thereby addressing your concern and addressing the concern of the Judiciary Committee.
No, again, I appreciate what you're saying, Senator Corbett, and I know you chair the Judiciary Committee. You know this stuff better than most of us. It's one question to ask whether that language, that authority, if you will, should be written into the Public Utilities Code or the Civil Code.
Right.
It's a whole other conversation on what that language says or does. And as a point of policy, whether it's in Civil Code or in the Public Utilities Code, to charge the Public Utilities Commission with this new authority over third-party private entities, that in and of itself is a policy question.
Right. We also don't remove work that other committees do in other committees.
Right, and that's a process question.
If I may speak to the policy question.
Go ahead.
And I think civil code enforcement is not necessarily Public Utilities Commission. So Senator Florez and Senator Corbett's discussion of moving it to the Civil Code gets rid of that question.
Well, it would put it in the Civil Code as a Public Utilities Code. I get that. My question is, as a matter of policy, is it the best thing for us to do to charge the PUC with this specific function and responsibility as outlined in the bill or not?
Well, let me speak to the broader issue of the third-party protections, because this gets to Senator Kehoe's concern about how the data will be used and whether people will make good use of it. And the notion is that if I want to bring in an energy efficiency company to analyze my data, I will want to do that and say, look, here are the places where your leakages are taking place. Here's where your smart meter is telling you that you are using excessive electricity, and these are the changes you need to make. I want to know when I release that data, that data, in effect, does not become a commercial commodity that goes on the wire. And that's what we do in financial privacy, all of which is Civil Code, does not bring the Public Utilities Commission into play. It brings the district attorneys or the attorney general into play to say, are people misusing what the legislature has determined as private data? And the policy here is not just the privacy protection, but it also, we believe, will increase the use of this smart meter data, the willingness to give that smart meter data to a company, knowing that data is not now a matter of selling, of commercial, where you're going to get hit up with all kinds of marketing. You can decide that. You can release the data to a third party in this bill, and I think everybody agrees with the opt-in principle. but you want to know that by doing so, you're not putting that information generally out on the wire for all kinds of commercial marketing. So that's the substantive policy issue. The enforcement questions, and I think that's the one that the Judiciary Committee has spoken to, and hopefully is understood by this committee as well as a matter of
it's understood by the committee.
Improving the utilization of smart meter data.
It's understood by the committee, and it's understood by the chair. If you recall, I also have a bill that speaks to the access to third parties on user identifiable information as well. This is a different approach to it. I get that. I think a little bit more complex. And with different ramifications vis-a-vis the PUC's capacity, their ability to carry what they're being asked to carry.
Right, I think I'm trying to separate those issues. One is the critical nature of protection when you release your data to a third party, that it doesn't go necessarily further, that it's up to your control or choice, versus the question of where the enforcement mechanism on that comes into place.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Pardon me, but I think we could address my concerns by moving the privacy measures to the civil code, and we don't. If you believe it's necessary, we have to have the support of this committee to remove the regulatory authority from the PUC, which I think is a legitimate issue. That would address my concerns.
Okay, and who would the authority?
The civil code.
To do this go to. So civil code, and then it just becomes a civil legal issue. Okay. Other questions, comments from committee?
There's mine.
And I don't know if the PUC wanted to comment on that piece at all. Senator Wright.
For the PUC. Given that people, for example, if I live in the pg&e territory or if I live in the Edison territory, I don't have an option of who I purchase electricity from. It's a franchise. I don't think that they should have the right to sell or make a profit from any of the information on just as a matter of course. And if there's any profit made, that should certainly be recorded and become a part of the rate case itself. I mean, if I buy power from pg&e, I didn't buy it with the purpose of doing that. I mean, we have some of those issues with the phone company, and I think that they should be protections that should go forward, period. I mean, in this case, Senator Florez, I'm with you. It shouldn't even be a case where there'd be a third party. We might make an exception for those companies that would be third parties who aggregate the data and send you the bill. I think we had a bill last year, Senator, Mr. Chair, where somebody was going to aggregate data and send you a note to say, this is how much you used, and you might use it as an energy efficiency measure. But that would be for the benefit of the customer himself. So they would organize your data and send it to you. But there shouldn't be a case where you get a notice from Home Depot saying you need another washing machine because they bought that notice from pg&e. I think that should not occur. And in that instance, I think we need to just say, again, very definitively, that there should not be the selling of information, period, for retail purposes, just period.
Or at least a point in between, with or without the customer's consent.
But I would, and if I did that, I would make, I'd still be afraid because, I mean, in the old days, we made things when we had, slamming and cramming and all the other things that took place. I don't know that people would understand, what they were doing. But given that you don't have the option of, if I'm in Edison, I can't get DWP service if I live in Inglewood. So that part, I would probably be stronger even than Senator Florez is about protecting information that was gathered by a consumer who had absolutely no choice in where the information was collected. That would be a concern that I would have.
Okay. Other questions, comments from committee? If not, let me suggest this. We've discussed already sort of the process on how we got here and what's in front of us today. If what is before us is the bill as amended, reflecting the amendments suggested in the analysis. It's not a final product. The two big pieces that are outstanding, and this can be a work in progress here, there's some disconnect language that, based on the amendment language that Senator Florez brought in with him this morning, adds language to, I believe it's intent language that you seek to add. My suggestion would be maybe that's something that can be discussed and actually done in Appropriations Committee, just for clarity purposes, smoothness of the process purposes, number one. The privacy language being reinserted also in Appropes in Civil versus Public Utilities Code. That would also afford, I think, a few more weeks to iron out the specifics of, is it the Public Utilities Commission doing this or not, making it abundantly clear for the folks who have the concern about that specific entity being charged with those specific responsibilities as a way to move forward with this bill.
Sounds fantastic. Ask for an aye vote.
Any final questions, comments from committee? We'll take that as Senator Flores' close. There's nothing further. Let's call the roll.
All the amendments suggested by the committee.
Plus
Will be considered in appropriations.
privacy issues. But you're agreeing to them, right? You're agreeing to them, Mr. Chair.
But they may come back in appropriations.
Right. We're just going to take the bill as amended with all the amendments reflected in the analysis. Now we know, I'm not going to tie myself to the specific language today, Senator Corbett. I recognize disconnect issues could very well come back into the bill.
Well, I'll have to bring it back to judiciary otherwise, and we don't want to do that.
Okay. And
well, we'd welcome it to go back to judiciary.
We have a timing issue, right?
So we have a timing issue. So it's really an issue up to Senator Kehoe as the arbiter of all outstanding bills with language issues.
But as a way to move forward today.
I have a lot of help, luckily. So the judiciary amendments and the staff report amendments.
Well, we're taking the staff recommended amendments in the analysis today.
Today, okay. So
I'm recognizing that there's disconnect language that could reappear in the bill in a future form. If amended in appropriations or at some other point. As for the issues important to Senator Corbett, I recognize that could also reappear in the bill. But there's the specific language on the third parties. There's the how to regulate, how to enforce element that goes hand in hand with that. But I will reserve judgment until we see what final product is of negotiations and working with stakeholders on behalf of the author.
But I do want to ask you this question because I want to be clear. I want to be clear on this, Senator Padilla. I do understand. Of course, you want to see the language. I want to see the language too. I'm not approving anything without looking at language. So I certainly understand that and agree with you on that. But I understand you to be that it's acceptable to you to insert the third-party privacy issue in the civil code. So that the main thing is maintaining third-party privacy protection in the civil code. So we address your PUC issue. I know you're still concerned about, what's the regulatory issue. I get that.
If it's going to appear, it should be in the civil code.
Okay.
On the substance itself of the third-party piece, I'm not completely settled yet.
You're not acceptable to the third-party protection.
Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. That's still an area I'm mulling over.
Okay. Alrighty.
Okay. What's before us right now is the bill as amended, given all the recommended amendments in the analysis.
But then it goes to Appropes, in which we're going to
Add this other stuff.
add the other stuff.
But I will insist upon the work that was done in judiciary for me at some point in the process.
Okay. Let's open the roll.
Yes.
I think so.
Padilla?
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Dutton?
No.
Dutton, no. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Cox? Flores?
Aye.
Flores, aye. Kehoe?
Aye.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Oropeza?
Aye.
Oropeza, aye. Semidian? Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no. Right.
Okay, that has sufficient votes, but we'll keep the bill on call and allow absent members to add on. Next bill, I see Senator Price has been patiently waiting.